All right, how's it going, everyone? So I want to kind of share with you how I have NextAuth set up in this application that I'm working on. I'm not going to do any live coding. I'm just going to walk you through some code, show you some files. You're going to be able to understand it just as well, and it's probably going to be faster than live coding. I got this app here, and when you try to, let's go ahead and sign out. I got this set up with NextAuth, where NextAuth gives you a bunch of like predefined API auth URLs you can kind of go to. So this one I'm going to /sign out. And you can kind of, this is like a pre-generated page that they give you, which when you click sign out, it actually clears out your session and you get redirected back to the home page of my application, right? So all of this is used in NextAuth. I got a sign in button, which basically redirects you to a /sign in page. Again, this comes baked into NextAuth. I have it hooked up with Google authentication. It's pretty easy to get this set up. Honestly, the hardest thing to do to get this set up was to create the Google API stuff, which is kind of a pain in the butt, I'll be honest. But as you can see, it redirects you to the sign in with a Google page. You can click your username. It's going to set your session, and we get my name and my image. And these two things come directly from the user profile information from Google. So that's all pretty cool. And this, let me kind of show you, I know I haven't even talked about the actual code yet, but I want to kind of make sure you understand how a session works. So if you go to the dev tools and go to application, typically how sessions work is there's actually like cookies set on your browser. So if you look here, localhost 3000 under cookies, you will see that there is a session token set with some other stuff as well. So if I were to delete all these, that login button is going to come back and I'm not going to be logged in anymore. So this session ID or the session token is used on my backend with NextAuth to kind of authenticate all my requests. So let's kind of show like how I did some of the stuff. So how do I set this up? How do I make this content be dynamic? So let's just go ahead and go over to my example. So first thing is I had to set up a Google client ID and a client secret. Okay, so this is the most involved task, especially if you're not new to this. You have to set up two of these secret variables, which I had to go to Google and I had to like create a new credential here, create an OAuth 2. Hopefully it doesn't share any like secrets with you. You see here, like I set up like a name for a client web application. I allowed it to access local host. I gave it a callback URL, click save. Once you have that all set up, also on the right here, it'll tell you some secret codes and keys that you have to use. I deleted these so you guys can't see them on my screen recording. Not like it really matters. I could probably just delete this and recreate it. But you grab those, you put them in your .env file, and then when Next loads, your NextAuth library can actually load those. So how do I get NextAuth working? Well, it's pretty easy. I have mine integrated with Prisma in actual Planetscale. So if you look over here, I installed the NextAuth Prisma Adapter. So that basically hooks in your NextAuth automatically to your Prisma database. And then I have NextAuth here. I think that's about all I installed. There's probably something I'm missing. But once you have that set up, it's actually pretty easy. You go to your pages and you just make an auth folder in a nextauth.ts file. So here is where you set up your providers. Okay, so right now I have a Google provider, but you can go ahead and add in like GitHub providers or Facebook providers if you want. We have to go through the whole process of like setting up a client ID and secret for all those, pain in the butt. But once you get that set up, you can also set up an adapter. So basically I'm telling NextAuth to automatically save and store all my session related data into my database. So use a Prisma client, you pass it here to the Prisma adapter. And honestly, everything is just taken care of. Like, let me just show you. If I go to my database now, I'm using Planetscale here, which is basically a scalable database as a service website. But let me show you my tables. After basically, oh, I'm sorry, I missed a step. So after you set this up, there's also something you have to do with Prisma. So if I go to my schema, I basically had to copy and paste all this stuff in. So like we have a table for user session, verification token, and for account. I just copied these from the docs. Like there's nothing really special about this. But once you set that up, I had to do like run npx prisma migrate dev, and that creates your migration scripts, which are here. And when you apply those, it basically creates those tables into your database, and that is kind of like what is happening here. So if I go over here to my Planetscale database, I have those tables. I have account, session, and user and verification token. So after I log in, to my application, what happens is if I were to select star from session, you'll see that we have one session enabled. And if I were to go ahead and log in, let me go ahead and do that too. I want to kind of show what's going on. Click sign out. That should clear out my session from my Prisma database. And that should also clear out my session from my browser. So if I do that again, notice that there's no session data here anymore, right? So the session is stored on my database, and when you log into Prisma, it automatically fetches that session, sets my cookie, and does some stuff. There's also the first time you log in, I believe, it's going to create a user. So if I look at my user, I have one for my personal email here and have my name. I also have that image, right? And then it also gives you a unique ID for that user. So if I were to go ahead and clear this out, oops, let me clear, select star from account. And we also have an account, right? So this tells you like, what did the user log in with? What was their provider, Google? Here is their user ID. This is our internal application unique ID for this. So I think we'd scope all of our data using this ID, I believe, because this is kind of what's used for a session, a user, an account, and stuff like that. I'm still trying to learn some of this stuff, so correct me if I say anything wrong. But I'm not going to talk about how you set up Planetscale. I just set up a database and basically ran the migration and it got all set up. All right, so let's talk about NextAuth. I talked about the Google app. I talked about Planetscale, how that's all being persisted with the adapter. But how does NextAuth actually work? So let's go ahead and look at something. What do I want to look at? I want to show you the header. Okay, so when you have authentication with NextAuth, you have a hook you can call called useSession. And when you call it, you're going to get back an object that has a status, right? So the status of the session is either authenticated or unauthenticated. So if you've logged in, then you're authenticated, and I can display a sign out button. And then I can, have that sign out button just redirect you to the sign out API route. Again, that's provided to you from NextAuth. And I'm also displaying the image here. So you see session data user image. Inside the session, you get a data object that has like a user and a couple of properties attached to that user. Nothing too extravagant. But for the unauthenticated, again, like we show a button that allows you to go to the sign-in page and then also sign up, which technically does the exact same thing, which takes you to the sign-in page. So that's how you can kind of conditionally show and hide things in your UI based on if the user is logged in or not. And I think you can do a similar approach on your backend endpoints, except for instead of using useSession, you want to use a method called getSession. So if you had like an API endpoint and you wanted to get the session of the user, you could just call getSession. I believe that'll give it to you. I'm trying to think, was there anything else that was really needed for sessions? I'm probably forgetting something, but again, I haven't really done too much with this yet. Let me look at the actual API endpoint. So let me go to NextAuth. No, I didn't do anything there. I think that's about it. Honestly, like quick recap, you set up your Prisma schema, you run a migration against your database, that'll create a migration script, and it'll apply it to your database to create some tables. You set up this route. This is all in the documentation, by the way, so just go read the NextAuth doc. That's exactly what I did and got this going. Set up the Prisma adapter if you're using some type of like MySQL or Postgres database, and then set up your providers here. And that kind of just gives you a bunch of API endpoints you can kind of hit out of the box. Now, if you want to customize your sign-in pages or your registration pages, you can do that. It just takes a little bit more effort. There's also like callbacks to NextAuth you can do. So if you wanted to do some custom logic to modify the token or modify the session before you return it, like in the UI, you can do that. I haven't found a need to it yet. Or if you need to do some type of side effect when they first log in for the first time and you need to like do something on your back end or I don't know, you could do that if you want to. But that's kind of it. I mean, like read through these docs. NextAuth is pretty good. It's really easy to get going. And like I was actually surprised how fast it was to get it set up to my database. But at this point, like you can easily just hide and show stuff in your UI and do whatever you need to do with authentication. I'll probably make another video on this in the future if I add more features just to kind of walk you through what I'm doing. But hopefully this was a good overview and kind of just got your feet wet learning a little bit about NextAuth. I know I kind of skimmed over a lot of this stuff, but really it's as simple as that. You add this endpoint and that's about it after you like install these packages and done the Prisma stuff. But yeah, I don't know. If you have any questions, leave a comment below, give me a thumbs up, give me a subscribe, and also join my Discord if you want to talk to me directly and ask me some questions on Discord. I'm pretty active there. Anyway, have a good day and happy coding.